Hey, my name is Natalia. Quick question for you. Do you think that there are people alive today who could live to be 400 years old? Like there might be adults right now who could be living to 400 years old? In the last few years, more and more people are saying, yes, this could be possible. So what changed? Well, it's our breakthrough in neural nets, aka artificial intelligence. We're seeing examples of AI neural nets developed in the last few years that are unraveling the mysteries of life at a fundamental level. I'll give you an example that for me is pretty close to home. For most of my career, I worked as an engineer in the biotech space, specifically in genomics. Genomics is in part a study of how our genes, the very code of life, makes up everything about us. This includes what diseases we're susceptible to, how fast we age, and pretty much anything else that you can think of. In the late 90s, when the Human Genome Project was really ramping up, the first human genome cost $3 billion to sequence. And in the year 2001, it was $100 million. It was $100 million to sequence one person's DNA. Sequencing someone's DNA means taking an actual strand of DNA and through the sequencing process, turn it into readable text. Just like an app on your phone runs on code, every function it does is written letter by letter, character by character. In a similar way, every organism has a biological code that runs everything that it does. It's a bit more complicated than that, but we're going to get into that in a second. So being able to read the DNA code of a single human used to cost $100 million just a few decades ago. Now we're starting to approach a $100 genome, which is going to be a game changer for biology, health, and medicine. The rapid drop in sequencing costs was so rapid that it exceeds the Moore's Law. And Moore's Law is the observation that available compute cycles double every 18 months. And the cost of sequencing is dropping even faster than that. But one of the biggest obstacles that we're facing in the genomics industry is the sheer complexity of the structures that we're dealing with. To give you an idea, recently there's been more and more talk of proteomics. And proteomics is the study of proteins. The first thing to understand is that amino acids are the basic building blocks of life. And you can think of them as Lego blocks. And with these Lego blocks, we can build proteins. So amino acids and proteins are the building blocks of life, but they're also the machines that make life work. It's what allows us to see light, to breathe, to move, and to metabolize the things that we eat. Each protein has an intricate shape that defines what it does and how it works. We know of over 200 million proteins, and that number keeps going up and up as we continue to make discoveries. But the thing is that humans are pretty bad about understanding the 3D structures and shapes of these proteins. So if you take the proteins and you unravel it like a string of beads, you'll see that it's made up of about 20 different amino acids. Interactions between these amino acids makes the protein fold. It forms its shape out of limitless possibilities. For decades, a community of scientists have been trying to figure out a way to determine a protein's shape based on its amino acids. And this is a major challenge in our understanding of biology. Our ability to understand protein folding would allow us to understand the basic machinery of how life functions. The sequence of amino acids is folded into unique and specific 3D structures, and these structures determines the protein's function. And it's important to understand that a string of amino acids can fold in many different ways. To give you an idea, the number of atoms in the known universe is 10 to the 82nd power. But the number of unique ways that a protein can fold is 10 to the 143rd power. These are like unimaginably large numbers. So basically, it's going to take an enormous amount of time to go through all of these different types of configurations. Yet proteins can fold in seconds or less. And this, by the way, is called the Leventhal's paradox. So out of the about 200 million proteins that we are aware of, we've been able to determine the exact 3D structure of about 170,000 of them. We did that using X-ray crystallography, which, by the way, Walter White from Breaking Bad was really good at. His breakthroughs in X-ray crystallography was what made that multi-billion-dollar company, Gray Matter, form. And that's completely unrelated to anything here, but I just thought you should know. So while Gray Matter might be a fictional company, this next one is not. On June 25th, 2024, a new AI model was formed. It's called ESM3. ESM3 claims to have simulated 500 million years of evolution with a language model. Now, language models are a type of AI, aka neural net, that works with language. So you've probably heard of ChatGPT, which is pretty much the most famous language model. It's like the celebrity of language models. How ChatGPT was created is the neural net, or the brain behind ChatGPT. And it was trained on a lot of text, like a lot of text. It read everything from storybooks to newspapers to encyclopedias. It sees how words are usually put together, which words come after others, and basically how sentences are built. The model doesn't just memorize books. Instead, it learns the rules of language, kind of like how we learn the rules of grammar in school, but on a much larger scale. After reading all of these books, the model gets really good at what words come next in a sequence. It's like playing a word guessing game, but the model's super good at it because it's seen so many examples. So with this new ESM3 model, researchers asked one simple question. Instead of feeding it books, encyclopedias, and newspapers, what if we fed it the text of amino acid chains, specifically the sequence, structure, and function of proteins? So, spoiler alert, it worked. And you probably already figured that out. But let me first read a part of their announcement for when they were releasing ESM3. I think it does a really good job of capturing why it's so important. Biology is the most advanced technology that has ever been created, far beyond anything that people have engineered. The ribosome is programmable. It takes the codes of proteins in the form of RNA and builds them up from scratch, a fabrication at the atomic scale. Every cell in every organism on Earth has thousands to millions of these molecular factories, but even the most sophisticated computational tools created to date barely scratch the surface. Biology is written in a language we don't yet understand. If we could learn to read and write in the code of life, it would make biology programmable. ESM3 takes a step towards the future where AI is a tool to engineer biology from first principles in the same way we engineer structures, machines, and microchips, and write computer programs. That's really the point of all of this. We can engineer life the way that we do cars and buildings and iPhones. Now, there are a lot of ethical questions for sure, and a lot of important guardrails that need to be put in place, but that's going to be for another video. In this video, let's highlight one discovery that we're able to do with this new AI model, which, by the way, I haven't told you everything about it yet. There's one important thing about this model that we're going to leave till the end. So really fast, here's a glowy jellyfish. It's really pretty, probably don't want to touch it, but that fluorescent glow comes from fluorescent proteins that the jellyfish naturally produces. This is encoded in its DNA, and it's evolved through hundreds of millions of years of evolution. And there are other animals who've evolved the same protein. We also, for better or worse, have genetically engineered other animals to produce this type of protein, even though they never evolved it naturally. This new AI model has created a new generation of green fluorescent protein, or GFP. GFP is a protein that transforms itself. Its structure is an 11-stranded barrel with a helix that threads through its center, and after GFP folds, a spontaneous reaction occurs. At the center of the protein, the atoms that form the protein chain into a new configuration, creating a fluorescent chromophore. So scientists have discovered many variants of GFP. The very first artificial variants were found by making a handful of mutations that increased brightness or changed its color. With more recent laboratory and machine learning techniques, it's been possible to extend this search for distant variants that differ even up to 20% of the sequence. That's important to understand because up until now, nature has been able to produce these variants much better and in more diverse forms than we humans ever could. The process of evolution that creates new fluorescent proteins takes epochs of time. It takes hundreds of millions of years of living and dying, chance mutations, and natural selection, and adapting to its environment, and on, which brings us back to this new AI model, ESM3. When we gave it the structure of existing fluorescent proteins and asked it to create proteins with similar properties, ESM3 reasoned through a chain of thought process to come up with those alternatives. And you're going to be hearing that phrase a lot when talking about AI, this idea of chain of thought. And it basically means thinking through something step by step. So remember those shows and movies back in the 90s where the characters had some super elaborate plan that they were going to execute, and something just went horribly wrong, and they needed to think through what happened. So it would go something like, but if you're here and I'm here, then that means, and something like hilarious is about to happen. And that walking through step by step, that's chain of thought. So the AI model used this type of approach to come up with ideas of how this protein needs to look, what type of 3D shape it needs to have that functionality of glowing. Now keep in mind that generating one just by pure chance is almost impossible because we're talking about the astronomical number of sequences and shapes, like more possibilities than the number of atoms in the known universe. So scientists took 96 of these ideas that the AI model came up with, and they tested them. And they found a number of proteins that showed fluorescence, including one that was very different than anything that was found in nature. Now that protein was 50 times less bright than any of the other proteins that were found in nature. But it did show that this AI model was really good at guessing at the existence of proteins that humans would probably never have been able to encounter before, and likely would never have been able to discover without AI. The scientists then presented that protein that the model had dreamed up, and they asked it to create more proteins that were similar to it. So that produced another 96 proteins that were tested, and several had shown brightness that were similar to naturally occurring GFPs, including what they named ESM GFP. ESM for the name of the model and GFP for the protein in nature. The model had found a new protein never to have been seen in nature, with the functionality that it had been asked for. I think it's pretty nice how they named this after the AI model, just as we name elements and animals after the scientists who discovered them. This protein represents an equivalent to 500 million years of natural evolution. That's how long it would have taken nature to evolve in the wild, if it ever happened at all. Oh, and the other thing that I haven't mentioned yet is that ESM3 is open sourced, which means that there are going to be many other researchers and scientists that are going to have it available to them to discover so many things that's going to open up a new frontier for medicine and health and biology and everything in between. So it does seem that AI can help to unravel those very basic fundamental mysteries of life. So what do you think? Do you think that with breakthroughs like this, that we might potentially be able to see within our lifetime people that could live to 400 years? What about 200 years? Could we double our current lifespan? Let me know. Leave it in the comments. My name is Natalia. Subscribe for more AI and science news.